I wanted to talk with you about my theme last week, which
Yeah.
was I'm unapologetically myself in every
Mm,
moment. And it's really interesting setting these themes because it sort of sets the flavor of my week and also sets me up for situations to sort of like test that theme. And
mm,
I think this was my favorite one so far that I've done because it really pushed me to just be myself at a new level. And it's like once I made that decision, when I found myself in a moment where I wanted to filter myself, I immediately shifted towards just nope, just going to be myself 100%. And
mm,
it brought me to this place of such ease throughout my entire week, no matter what my situation was. It gave me a lot of freedom. And I
mm,
had a realization that when you decide to be 100% yourself, no matter what, no matter who you're interfacing with, it's actually a tremendous act of self-love and self-acceptance because essentially what I was telling myself was no matter what my state is, I'm enough for this moment. I accept myself as I am 100% for this moment. And I love myself so much that I'm not going to change who I'm being in this moment. And the liberation that I felt all week, really,
mm.
was just, it was unreal. Like I had so much insight into just being like, wow, I've been filtering myself a lot, and that takes a lot of work, actually. It takes a lot of work to change who you are, to try and appropriate like your energy depending on who you're around. And
Mm.
so I just wanted to share that with you because it was totally profound and I feel like it's kind of stuck. Even though the week is over, I was kind of contemplating it a little bit last night and I'm
Mm.
like, okay, this is just my new way of being. Like I don't have to try and be anything that I'm not. And it
Mm.
sounds silly to say that at this point because I've been, pretty self-aware for a number of years now. And now all of a sudden it's elevated to a new level of freedom to just be me. It's like and I had a cool synchronicity too. I was, that saying is it's kind of a unusual way to say I'm being myself. I'm unapologetically me in each moment.
Mm.
And I hadn't
Mhm.
shared that with anybody except for you and Julia. But I was talking with this girl who I haven't seen in a long time, and I asking her about her life, and as you know, she's got a boyfriend who she's been with for 2 years now, and she really likes him. And I was like, oh, awesome. Like, what do you like about him? And she was like, well, he's really nice. He respects me. He balances me out, and he's unapologetically himself. And I heard her say that, and I was just like, whoa, like that was for me right there. Direct
Mm.
from source, like who else says that, you know?
Mm.
And so it was just like a really beautiful moment because I was being myself talking to her and
Mm.
really just inquiring genuinely. And she responded with that. And I didn't say anything because it wouldn't have mattered to her, but it mattered to me. And I was like, that's a really beautiful sign from beyond that I'm on the right path. And I just love when little synchronicities like that happen. But
Yeah.
anyways, I just wanted to share that with you and see if you had any thoughts about that.
I love that, man. That's awesome. Yeah, so much of that just resonates and like lights me up. Like, you're saying that it takes a lot of energy to filter, like I know that. I know that. Um that liberation of energy is like, wow, I don't have to like have all these sensors pointing inwards to be like, should I let that out? I don't know. Like there's so much that goes on that we just think that's normal. I think when we're used to that, it's like, oh, this is just how I am, whatever. But
Mhm.
actually, when you let that out, you're like, whoa, I could just do that. I love it. I was curious, like what, yeah, like how did that show up? Um, you made that decision and then you noticed, right? So you had the self-awareness, you're like, oh, I'm about to filter myself, or oh, this is a time where I might filter myself. Like, do you have an example of how that showed up, or maybe in the past you would have just let that filter run, or
Yeah, definitely. So as you know, I'm building my coaching practice, and that is taking some time and effort to make consistent money. And so I've been doing a few things on the side to make some extra cash. One of those things is my friend Bob owns a catering company in Boulder, and so I've just been working a couple gigs. And it's been a long time since I've worked that type of a job with that sector of society. I've been very much in the health and wellness realm, in the spiritual realm, and not so much in the sort of like everyday human world. And previously, when I worked there, I was running my kombucha company. And every time I would like somebody would ask me what I do and I would share about the kombucha company, I would feel myself sort of filtering like there's a way that I would describe it to my friends, and then there's a way that I would describe it to everyday people. And I would feel myself shifting to that everyday people way of sharing about what I do. And now I'm doing this spiritual coaching, health coaching thing, and people ask me what I do. I could feel myself wanting to filter. I could feel myself wanting to sort of like dumb it down and like say it in a way that made me feel comfortable so that I didn't have to explain it further to the person. But this time
mm,
I just was myself. I was like, okay, I can feel myself wanting to filter. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to share what I'm doing because I love what I'm doing. And who knows, maybe, it will have an impact what I share. And so I did that. I just started sharing, like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. This is what you know, where my last company took me. And yeah, I didn't filter. And sure enough, like it just that level of energy that I had to expend in that small interaction was so much less. And I felt so calm and comfortable to share that I was like, why haven't I been doing this all along? Just be
mm,
yourself. It's such a simple thing. And we hear it all the time, whether it's be here now or be yourself, but they both mean the same thing. Like the more present I am with the moment, and the more that I express what's truly real and present for me in the moment, the more free I am.
mhm,
And it was just a beautiful recognition that happened in the moment. And there were a number of other times that it was always around what I do. It was always around like what I do for work, what I do in my life. I'm not going to filter it for anybody. Like this is me.
mm, mhm,
And it just felt very empowering and also like yeah, maybe people aren't going to know or care or understand what I do, but they're asking, so I'm going to tell them.
mhm. I love it, man. Yeah. It occurs to me that the way that would show up for me is there would be some like the filter has this flavor for me of like, well, I'm gonna try to word it in a way that this person can understand, but I'm making assumptions. I'm like, well, if I said it the way that I just say it to my friends or like the way I talk to myself, they might not get it because I'm assuming that we're different,
Hmm.
right? And so like it it comes from maybe like it's a genuine place of wanting to just not like say something that's not going to land with them or something like that. But I can see that I'm like it's all based on assumptions. It's all like, well, they can't really handle the way that I really would want to say it, you know. And even that, it's like, why? Why not just say it. And even if they think, oh, this guy's a fucking nut job, like, who cares? If that, then great. If that's what they think, awesome. Like, think that, you know? And then there's more clarity of like, great, you think I'm a nut job. All right, cool. I'm not going to expend so much energy on, you know, trying to, whatever, connect up on this point. But there's how it would show up for me. It's not, I mean, and there are times where I'm like, maybe it's more self-conscious or I don't know if I want to put this out, but a lot of times it has the flavor of, oh, I'm just trying to like translate it for them,
Hmm.
which, you know, there's a balance there. Maybe it's like, okay, know my audience and what are the words I could say to this person that would just pique their interest or something if I'm really trying to, you know, I don't know, convey it in a way that would land for them. But even that, it's like there's so much energy that goes into that. It's like, I don't have to make that assumption. I can just say, wow, this is what I do. This is what I'm into. You know? And then if they like give me a blank face, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That did land for you. Great.
Yes. Yes, there's definitely it's like a I don't really care what somebody thinks of me, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
good, whether it's bad, whether it's a judgment or whatever. I don't really care. I'm just gonna show up as myself, and if that resonates with you, great. If not, great. Let's just
Yeah.
move on. But the ease of just being in each moment has skyrocketed
Hmm.
this past week. And so it's been a fun experiment to sort of set a theme and have a sort of anchor point for myself in each moment and just as each day goes on and then opportunities will present themselves for me to sort of tap into that theme even more. It's been wonderful.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The power of setting intention
Yeah.
and having the awareness to follow through with it, right? Like you've cultivated enough awareness where in that moment you can be like, oh, I'm here. I'm at that point where I get to choose. Right. Like
Yes.
that's I come back to that idea so much. It's like we have to be awake when we're at the choice point. And we have to
Hmm.
realize like, oh, I'm here. I'm at that point where I can choose the old way or the new way.
Hmm.
Ah, well, I said I was going to choose the new way, so I'm going to choose the new way.
Hmm.
Love it.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's been coming up for you in the past week?
Yeah, as you were sharing, I don't exactly remember the wording of my theme or whatever I shared last week. It was something around, I mean, I've just been in this place of kind of more spaciousness of um yeah, just kind of creating space, creating like actual rest where I can like put down the to-do list and been noticing, you know, like just little hints, little sparks of like, oh, that's what I want to do. That idea or some clarity has actually been coming in these moments of spaciousness. Um, and you know, it was a beautiful way that it played out is that I through a series of events, like you sent that link, that podcast with Rick Rubin and what's his name?
Stephen Pressfield?
Stephen Pressfield. And so that led me to look at Rick Rubin's podcast. And I saw an episode with him and Richard Rudd. You know who that
Dude,
is?
that is so fun. I listened to the same one this week.
Dude,
Yeah.
really? Yeah, I
Amazing.
listened to
Yes.
it like midweek. And then I'm like, dude, Richard Rudd is, there's something about the way he speaks that I'm like, it's just intriguing to me. And I'm
Hmm.
like, I can feel a real coherence in him, even if, you know, so I got interested in Gene Keys and I had looked at it before, but all of a sudden I'm just like pulling the threads without even really thinking about it, without analyzing, like, well, do I want to look at this? I don't know. I'm like, next thing I know, I've got the Gene Key book on audio, and I'm like looking up my gene keys, and there's a big part of my analytical mind actually that it's like this thing is way too complex. Like, I don't know. It's it's very like intricate. There's all these different connections.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another part that's just this, like, I mean, Richard, he talks about the art of contemplation, right? It's like, he's like, that's it. That's the magic. It's like, don't try to like figure it out here. You just sit with it and like sit with your whole being. Just let it
Mm-hmm.
marinate in it, right? And I feel like that's ended up being kind of the theme of at least the last half of the week, is just this idea of like contemplation, of just being like slowing down and creating this spaciousness for something to emerge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and it's interesting. Even right now, like there's this energy kind of bubbling up in me as we talk about this, and there's so just in my body, like I feel like a little bit of this cold, and I feel a little like here inside, but it's also some excitement. It's like, and so if I try to put words to it, it starts to feel somehow it's a little uncomfortable or something if I'm trying to like explain what's happening. But if I just actually like sit back and breathe into it, it's just it's energy that's kind of bubbling up.
Mm.
It's like a wellspring. And that's, I think that's a good description of this week, of this idea of like slowing down and not needing to like figure it out so much. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like there's something bubbling up that I'm consciously deciding like, don't put it into words yet. Um,
Mm.
and that it's different. It's an interesting experiment, and it feels worthwhile for sure.
Mm.
Um, and maybe one concrete share is that, from in this space, I have a monthly call with my dad that we started. I initiated a year and a half ago or 2 years ago or something like that. And so once a month we get on, and we talk for at least an hour. And in the beginning, like it was, I had all these like I want our connection to be different, and I want, whatever. Like I would leave the call and be like how do I don't know. There was something I wanted different, right? And like, so I would just be a little bit like frustrated with it or something. And these last several months, it's been more and more of this like, I walk away and I'm like, I feel so good. I feel so connected to my dad. I feel so enlivened. We for 2 hours and we both were like, wow, 2 hours. Like normally it's about an hour and we're like, okay, cool. Like, we got other stuff to do. See you later. And like 2 hours went by and we're both like, oh shit, wow. And he was sharing about like his work, and like he can go off on these big tangents where sometimes I'm like, I don't really want to know about what that person said to that person to this guy. Like, I really just want to know like about you, Dad. I don't really want to know like the surface story about this guy that I don't know and what he said to you. But he was sharing, and he goes off into all those different realms, and I was just like fascinated. I'm like, he gets so alive. He's there's so much energy that he talks about this, and I could just see him in a different light and just appreciate like, wow, you get so excited about this stuff. That's
Mm.
so cool, you
Mm.
know? And was able to reflect that back to him. And just so it just felt like there's just this spaciousness that I'm noticing in my interactions, just in myself. It's just like, huh,
Mm.
okay, this is what's happening now. Great.
Beautiful, man.
Yeah.
I love that you have that connection with your dad. I'm sure he loves it so much. And it's cool to hear how it's evolved over time. And you've been able to, it sounds like you were able to break through that barrier that you were wanting more connection. And at the same time, you're able to hold more within yourself. And those two things combined, it sounds like your dad really loosened into this connection with you and you loosened as well. And now the connection is there in its own way, in a way
Mhm.
that you thought you wanted. You thought you wanted it one way and allowed it to happen on its own. And now it's happening in its own way, but the connection is there. I love that. And I especially love that you brought up that conversation about contemplation that Richard Rudd was speaking on, and we're on such the same page. Like that's
Hmm.
also why this is so fun for me every week, because like
Yeah.
all this juicy stuff comes up and we're like, oh dude, I was thinking about the same thing or listening to the same thing, and
Yeah.
that conversation inspired me a lot as well. And I'm curious for you, because he describes contemplation as like they talk a lot about taking a pause in that conversation. And that's inspired me to take more pauses throughout the day. And they also spoke about walking as a contemplative practice. I
Hmm.
do a lot of sitting and I do a lot of activity and I do take walks. And I do find that the walking sort of helps to work things out. But I'm wondering what your contemplation time is like. Like, have you
Mm.
started incorporating like, okay, I'm not going to meditate. I'm going to contemplate.
So I've started, I downloaded his Triple Flame app,
Mm,
which just reminds you, it's just like you pause 3 minutes every 3 hours. That's the prescription. And so I've tried it for the last couple of days, and even that like feels like it's small, but it's huge. It just feels like just reminding myself that throughout the day I can just take 3 minutes and just be.
mm,
And I have a sense that as I continue that that will like have compound interest. Just that
mm.
like that rhythm of just like, okay, yeah. And now I get to pause. Yep, there's still stuff I need to do. Yep. And now I just get to pause. Um, so that's been a small way. And then as well, so I've just been really interested in the gene keys. And so I've got like my profile, and there's just so much there to take in, but they have like a little intro course that's free, that he's like, okay, here's one aspect and we're going to talk, here's some words about it and here's an audio about it, and the audio is like 20 minutes. And so lately I'll just sit and I'll have like my cup of tea or coffee, whatever, and I'll sit on the couch and just listen to it and look out at the like out of our window. That's just like this beautiful view, and just be in that place of just like I'm just allowing it to like wash over me. I'm not taking notes. I'm not trying to figure it out so much. I'm just like letting these words wash over me and just kind of being with it.
Mm,
And then maybe afterwards as well, I'll just sit there for another 5 or 10 minutes and just kind of be in that place where it's like there are thoughts, like thoughts are coming about the thing, and maybe like a feeling is coming about the thing, but I'm not trying to control it. I'm not trying to like, all right, figure this thing out. Um, yeah, that's been
mm,
nice. It's like something that I want it. I want to do more. Like
mhm.
as I get a taste for it, I was like, oh, this is nice. And that's actually, I mean, it's like why I want to be switching to tea right now. It's like you mentioned, it was like before we started recording, it's like the energetics of tea. And
Mhm,
it's tea feels more contemplative than coffee.
mhm,
And I love coffee. But coffee is more like, all right, what am I gonna do?
mhm,
Great. I'm ready for action. And tea is
mhm.
more like I can contemplate a cup of tea.
Absolutely. Not to mention, depending on the tea, how it was processed or how old the trees are or bushes are, and like the energetics of the tree plant connected to the earth as opposed to the coffee plant. Although I will say the higher vibe coffee too has a similar effect, although maybe a little more stimulating. But if you buy some coffee from the Trident as well, like all that stuff is top tier, best quality coffee you can
Mm,
ever buy.
mm,
Uh, but anyways, I love that, man. I love that you have been expanding. I'm just picking up on this theme of expansion for you. And I feel like even before you started the weekly qigong practice, like your ability to like create space within yourself to hold things, to hold feelings, to hold what's happening for you is really inspiring. And you've influenced me in a lot of ways just by doing what you do and me witnessing what you do. Like, for example, I've been working with my anger for many years now. And having a child, sometimes I let the anger rip sometimes. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want her to think I'm perfect by not being angry. But other times I'm like, okay, I could maybe temper that a little bit. And so I've been thinking of you a lot in the respect of like when a strong emotion like anger comes up, been trying to take a pause and be like, all right, I can either act on this anger or I can just hold it. I can hold it within myself and I can feel it. It's like it's fire. It's fire within me. And my deepest impulse is to just let it out.
yeah.
But in that holding, it's been allowing me to sort of still feel that anger, still give that a place in my body, but not act on it. I can hold it and still be kind, still be patient. I mean, not every time, but
Mm,
this is the transformation that's happening within me is my by witnessing your ability to hold and create more space within you. It's inspired me to start developing that space within myself in a new way.
mm,
So I just wanted to thank you because I just love the way you describe it. And it's done something within me. It's stuck within me. Like,
mm,
okay, I can just create more space for this. And I feel like when anger, I'm using that as the example because it's the strongest emotion for me.
mm,
When anger doesn't have enough space within me, that's when it comes out. That's when you act
mhm.
on the anger. And so by creating more space inside to hold the anger, it doesn't have to come out and I don't have to ruin anybody's day. It's like I can just contain that within myself, watch it, and soon it will start to trickle back down to where it came from.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for that reflection. And that just yeah, that feeds me and that feels good. That's like that's what I'm here for, right? Is like I'm helping you and you're helping me, and like there's this thing and this synergy that happens. That's why I show up for men's group. That's what it is. It's like, oh, you're doing that thing, and that inspires me to do that thing, which then feeds you. And it's like we're lifting the tide, right, of
Hmm.
everyone around us.
Hmm.
And it just makes me think like again and again with coaching work or talking about the workshop we're putting on is like a big theme that comes up for me is increasing our capacity to be with life, to be with the uncomfortable and the ecstatic,
Hmm.
right? It's like if our threshold is pretty small, then yeah, anything that knocks us off a little bit of our center, we're gonna explode out into rage. We're gonna sink. We're gonna collapse down. We're gonna be like, "Ooh, I'm gonna fucking avoid that. I can't handle that." Right? But if we can actually increase, and it does feel like it's this internal process of like I'm actually expanding myself to create more space for that thing, then that thing isn't going to overtake you, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have a thing that's size X and your size X, then as soon as that thing comes up, it's like that's all of you. You are
Mm-hmm.
anger.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can be 10x and that thing is size X, you're like, okay, there's wow, there's anger. And that's yeah, it's pretty sharp anger. Cool. There's space for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. And it does make me think because it's an interesting idea to in my head to play with at least. It's like, what is it? Right. It's the polarities of life, right? It's the paradoxes. It's like it's never just one thing, right? So we were talking earlier about being unapologetically you, where it's like, okay, but what does that mean? Because there are times when actually discernment is like, wow, that's some really big anger, and I really just want to like yell at my kid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that might be a being unapologetically you. Well, I'm just fucking angry.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also this place of like discernment and being able to you said like contain. And so there's a balance there, right? It's like sometimes we need to learn to just yeah, let that stuff out more. Stop filtering ourselves. But then other times we're like actually no, it makes sense to have some whether it's a filter or something, it's like and the language we use feels different, right? When I say I'm like I'm filtering myself, that feels like I'm constraining myself and I'm like locked inside of a cage here. And then it's liberating to let myself out. But then in other times it's like, oh no, I had the discernment, I have the space to just like notice that, right? Like it doesn't feel so constrictive.
Mm-hmm.
But it's we're kind of playing with the same dynamic of like, do I let this out? Do I just let everything out then?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe that's not the answer always, right? But it's I don't know. Like I'm curious what that sparks for you.
Well, I love that you brought that up because I was thinking the exact same thing throughout this week. Like, okay, I'm feeling angry right now. Would it really be me to just let out that rage and ride the wave of anger? Well, when I'm being me, I also have always have a choice how I want to be, right? Like
Mm,
the filtering of who I am, yes. If I don't do that, then I feel more free. However, when a strong emotion comes up and I choose to either let it out or not let it out, that's also an act of self love and self acceptance because I'm recognizing that I'm angry. And then within a few seconds, I'm like, okay, is this going to be helpful or useful to let this out? Or is it going to be more helpful or useful to lovingly contain that for myself so that I can continue to be pleasantly myself? I think there's absolutely a place for anger, especially like it's there for a reason. Channeling that anger into love or creativity is a whole other thing than just letting that become who you are. Because when
mm.
we let our emotions become who we are, they are such strong feelings that they sometimes cause us to do things that we either wouldn't be proud of or would regret. Like, for myself, anger, if I get overly angry at my child and then she starts crying because I was letting out my anger, then I would feel shitty about that. I'd be like, oh shit, like I should have expressed my anger in a different way that isn't going to affect her. And it's the same for any other feeling or experience. But you're right, it's paradoxical because it's all about choice, right? It's all about discerning.
That's
There's
what it
a
is.
choice there.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
choosing to be me unapologetically at every moment. And by doing that, I also get to choose how I express myself.
Yeah. I think that's exactly where my head went. It's like it's all about choice. So in the like at the time where I'm choosing to let myself out, it's like I'm actually working against the old pattern says, oh, filter that,
Mm-hmm.
filter, keep that in, right? And the liberating choice is to say, no, actually, I'm gonna let that out. I'm gonna say this thing to that person. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'm gonna say a thing that's sharp. Okay, I'm gonna say a little thing that's sharp. Because I normally would be like, oh, I can't say that.
Mm.
You know, okay, I'm choosing that. And then I see, right? It's like this maybe I mentioned it to you, right? But there's a form in the qigong that I do. It's like just one of the warm-ups, but there's this like strike that you do, and you strike, and then you immediately like there's this like softening and
Mm.
like checking, like how did that land? Okay, and then like there, as you strike, there's no like it's just like love and softness on your face. And you're like, okay, there might have to come out with some energy. I chose that, and now I'm also choosing to check in. How
Mm.
did that land? All right, and then same with the anger. It's like if I just let anger take over, and anger, I like the idea of like it driving the bus, then I'm not choosing. Then anger has just I've let it take over and it's spilling out, and I'm wow, what the hell, And I didn't really choose that.
Mm-hmm.
And now if I can, in that instance, okay, actually I'm going to contain it and I'm going to choose. How do I want to respond to this? Maybe it is a time to choose to express anger to your kid and say, hey, you know what? That makes me really angry when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it's because I get scared because I care for your safety and that you can't do that thing, right? There can be a sharpness, but I've chosen to express that to the child to say, hey, that's not okay. I'm still here. I love you so much, right? But like, there's a choice there as opposed to right, and just like that just hurt her,
Yeah.
and that hurt me,
Yeah.
right? It's like
Exactly.
and that choice, like I feel like creating that capacity within ourselves gives us choice.
Yes. Yes.
Otherwise,
Exactly.
we're consumed by whatever story we're in, and there's no choice there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love this conversation.
Yeah.
It's really it's just tapping into that essence of who we are because behind all the anger, behind all the choice, behind all of the pauses, behind all of the contemplation, behind everything we do, there's you, right? And you cannot be defined by any number of words. You can't be defined by a description of your body, can't be defined by any characteristic that you want to give yourself because you are so much more complex than that. And it reminds me of this Buddhist idea of emptiness, right?
Mm.
Because if you think about who am I and what am I, there's not a single thing that I could say that would define who and what I am because we're not just one thing. We're a conglomeration of energy, a conglomeration of all kinds of things. And if you try and find, like, okay, where am I? You're not really anywhere. And that's a mind-blowing thought. But when we do these things, like take contemplative time, when we make choices within ourselves, where is that even coming from? I don't know, but it's me.
Mm.
What are you going to do to lift up your world this week?
Mm. It's a good question. I like that question. What am I going to do to lift up my world this week? Hmm. I'm going to keep with this contemplative momentum or energy. Something about it feels really right, and it's kind of building over the last several weeks is this idea of like just spaciousness and not always needing to do and Well, what occurs, what comes up is maybe actually a contrast is with the one client I have right now. 18-year-old kid. I've actually been bringing a little bit more sharpness there.
Mm,
Um, and I think it's landing. I think it's what he needs. It's kind of just what it's like as I tune into it's what I need in that space. And so it's like honoring, just like there's this relationship that something needs to shift. And we're kind of in this place of reworking things. And so I'm lovingly bringing a little bit more sharpness there of like, hey man, I need you to step it up if we're gonna keep doing this.
mm.
Um, so that's nice to just to notice like the two feelings, right? There's a little bit more yin over here of just like, yeah, there's more softness, more spaciousness, and then over here it's actually yang energy of like, hey, when you're here, let's show up. So
Beautiful.
those two things, holding that balance, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What about you?
I've been playing around with this energy of charisma and that also being a choice. And what I mean by that is when the moment calls for charisma and I'm not feeling up to it, that's an opportunity for me to strengthen my charismatic muscle. And so I've been experimenting with like, oh shit, like I'm feeling low energy right now. I could bring that and just kind of coast, or I can choose to summon up the creative energy within me and be really expressive and be really engaging and energized. So that's my intention and theme for this week is I'm going to state it in the affirmative. I summon charisma whenever I choose.
What in you tells you that a certain moment calls for charisma?
It's more of a practice. Like I want to be able to at will summon up that energy. And so I'm noticing when I'm resistant to being energetic, that if I just choose to do it, I'm more than capable of doing it. It's more about I just want to be capable at any moment, spontaneously, to be like,
Mm,
oh, I, I'm energetic. I can summon up that energy. I'm being fully right here, and it's so much so that it's like permeates out. Because when I come across people who have a lot of charisma and they're doing their thing, like it energizes me. It makes me
mhm,
excited. I want to be more engaged with them. And so I think it comes from this desire to be more engaging. I want to be more engaging with people when I want to be, but also when I don't really want to be. I want to prove to myself that I'm capable.
mm,
And so by strengthening that muscle, my baseline level of being charismatic is just a little bit higher. And I know within myself that when I choose to do that, I can do it.
mm. Beautiful. So right now it's about it's like you're going to the gym and you're realizing you strengthen this muscle a little more. So you're setting the intention to like, all right, I'm going to train charisma this week. And so
Yeah.
is like the cue like you notice, oh, I actually don't want to bring it right now. It's like I'm feeling a little bit like down. It's like, ah, okay, here's the time to turn it up. All right. Charisma
Yes.
time.
Exactly. And I mean to varying degrees, but at
Yeah.
least
Oh
a
yeah.
step above where I was at, where I'm like, I'm tired,
Yeah.
right? I don't really want to, be engaging. I'm just like, all right, just okay, be alive.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I want to play with that too. I'm gonna see. if there's times that I want to like just turn it on because it's I mean even just that little bit that I just did, it's like oh it actually brings it does it enlivens, and so it's so interesting that it's like we have so much choice, you know, and I don't know, you know, and sometimes I'm like when I get down, I'm like I must have fucked up somehow
Mm,
because I am I just choosing to be down, and that's not you know I realize that's not entirely fair. Sometimes like there's just like energies that are sweeping through us and we have to learn how to deal with it and we have to learn how to welcome sadness and melancholy and all this stuff. And it's like this exploration of like, how much choice do I have? Maybe
hmm
I do have choice and maybe the wisest choice is to just like let the sadness be there. Okay, great. Well, it's here. I'm going to choose to just be slow today and let that
hmm
happen.
hmm
But there's also these other times where it's like I'm just feeling a little grumpy or just like a little bit like, man, could I choose to turn up and just be a little like, all right, I'm here.
hmm Yes, and I definitely agree with you. Like we need to be whole. We need to be complete in that. Yes, sometimes the moment calls for low energy. The moment calls for quiet and calm and melancholy and sad.
Hmm.
And we need to feel all those things too. And I just want to clarify, I'm not saying to bypass those things at all. It's more of a like like what you were saying, like, oh, am I just doing this because I'm choosing to be like this or what? I'm going to choose something else. I'm going to choose to bring the energy. And I think where that's really showing up for me is just in my relationship and just in doing sort of like jobs, like this side work that I'm doing. Like I could, in the past I could have just been like, okay, I'm just gonna kind of put my head down and get to work and get the job done. But now I'm like, I'm gonna engage with people. I'm gonna ask them about their lives. I'm gonna bring the energy in the room up so that we can all have more of a good time while we're doing this thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm flagging in my head. I'm like, this week, you know, I'm doing construction around the community here, and so I just have little interactions with neighbors, and I'm generally like, I'm happy. I'll put on a smile, but I'm just gonna like pay attention to those interactions of like, yeah, maybe could I bring even a little bit more charisma and just a little bit more energy and just like maybe there's an intention of like, I want that person to walk away being like, ah, so nice to see that guy. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel lighter because he was smiling so much. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like, huh, that's an interesting intention. I like that. So
Cool.
I'm gonna take that as well.
Awesome, man. Well, it's been such a joy talking with you this morning. I love when we get these juices flowing. There's the exchange of energy is always really pleasant and wonderful for me. I never know exactly where we're going to go, and that's part of the fun. So thank you for this conversation.
Yes, sir. Yeah, man. I love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll talk to you next week.
All right.
See ya.